The mansion on the hill had rules of its own. Silence was one of them. Even the guards posted at the iron gate spoke in hand signals. Even the wind seemed to lower its voice as it passed through the trees. Sang Park-ho had built his life that way. Controlled, quiet, untouched. For 10 years, nothing had disturbed it. Until that night, laughter echoed through the upper floor. Deep, sudden, real. The guards stiffened. One of them glanced up, uneasy. That sound didn't belong to this house. Inside, servants froze mid-step, trays trembling in their hands. Did you hear that? A maid whispered. No, another replied quickly, fear sharpening her voice. You didn't hear anything. But they all had. Upstairs, Park-ho stood alone in the dark of his private study. City lights bleeding through the glass wall. His reflection stared back at him. Tie loosened, jaw tense, eyes no longer empty. In his hand was a single red heel. A woman's heel. He hadn't noticed picking it up. Only that it was suddenly there. Proof that the night had been real. For 10 years, no woman had crossed his world. No touch, no warmth, no invitation past the walls he built after the accident. After everything he'd lost. Emotion had been a liability. Silence had kept him alive. And yet, her laughter still rang in his ears. The memory came uninvited. The gala. Gold lights. Champagne bubbles rising too fast. Power dressed as elegance. He'd stood at the edge of the ballroom as he always did, surrounded by men in black, watching without participating. Then Helen Joshua walked in. She didn't pause to assess the room. Didn't scan faces for approval. She moved like the night had been waiting for her. Golden dress clinging to her skin, confidence rolling off her in waves. Conversations faltered. Eyes followed. She wasn't polite energy. She was dangerous energy. Park-ho had noticed her without meaning to. Not because she tried to be seen, but because she didn't care if she was. When the music shifted, slow and deep, she turned. Their eyes met across the room. Something unreadable passed between them. And then she was standing in front of him. You look bored, she'd said, lips curved in a knowing smile. Dance with me. Gasps. Shock. His men moved instantly, but Park-ho lifted a single finger. Not no. Not yes. Curiosity. Helen didn't wait. Her hand closed around his. That was the moment. Not the dance. Not the eyes watching. The touch. Warm. Certain. Human. His body had reacted before his mind could stop it. A sharp inhale. A heartbeat that didn't feel like memory. For the first time in 10 years, something inside his chest had moved. Now, in the quiet of his study, Park-ho tightened his grip on the heel. Find her, he said softly into the darkness. Across the city, Helen Joshua was living her life exactly as she had before, unaware, unhurried. Her apartment hummed with music as she brushed her teeth, dancing slightly in her pajamas. She laughed at her reflection, replaying the gala in her head. The stiff men. The tension. The way the so-called silent dragon had looked at her like she'd cracked something open. He really couldn't dance, she muttered, rinsing her mouth. But trouble looks good in a suit. A knock sounded at her door. She frowned. No one ever knocked like that. Controlled. Polite. Dangerous. Helen opened the door without fear. 2 men in black stood in the hallway. Calm. Still. Miss Helen Joshua, one said, bowing slightly. Our boss would like to see you. She blinked. Your boss? Sang Park-ho. For a second, she wondered if this was a joke. Then she noticed the black limousine idling below, polished to silence. Helen crossed her arms. If he wanted to see me again, he could have asked. Sending an army is dramatic. He insists, the man replied. She sighed theatrically. Fine, but I'm not leaving without breakfast. 20 minutes later, Helen stepped into the limousine like she was headed to an award show, croissant in hand, silk robe flowing. The city passed by unnoticed. Her curiosity grew, but fear never followed. The mansion gates opened slowly. When she stepped inside, servants froze. No woman had walked these halls in years. Sang Park-ho waited at the entrance. They studied each other in silence. You again, Helen said lightly. I was starting to think I imagined you. You're hard to forget, he replied. She smiled. That's usually my line. Inside his study, he placed the red heel on the table between them. You left something behind, he said. Helen's eyes widened. You kept my shoe. She laughed. You Cinderella'd me. It's not just a shoe, Park Ho said quietly. It's evidence. Evidence of what? That you changed something, he answered. For the first time, his lips curved, not quite a smile, but close enough to matter. Helen leaned back. Careful, boss man. You might be enjoying this. He met her gaze. That's what worries me. Outside, thunder rolled low. Neither of them noticed. The silence in the mansion did not lift after Helen left. Sang Park Ho remained where he was, standing in the middle of his study as if the room itself had shifted around him. The red heel still sat on the table, untouched. Evidence, he had called it, of disruption, of failure. Minute J waited near the door, careful not to breathe too loudly. She didn't bow, Minute J said quietly. Park Ho's eyes lifted. No, she didn't ask permission to sit. No, she wasn't afraid. Park Ho said nothing. That was the most unsettling part. She spoke as if she could leave whenever she wanted, Minute J continued. And she did. Park Ho turned back toward the window. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware that something had fractured behind these walls. She will come back, Park Ho said. Minute J frowned. So? Not because I summon her, Park Ho clarified. Because she chooses to. Minute J hesitated, then nodded. We'll keep distance. Quiet surveillance only. Park Ho's voice dropped. No. Minute J stilled. She is not to be followed like a threat, Park Ho said. She is to be observed. From afar. Yes, sir. Across the city, Helen Joshua stepped out of the limousine and into her street like she was returning from brunch, not a mafia boss's mansion. The car pulled away without ceremony. She exhaled once she was alone. Well, she muttered, unlocking her door, that was dramatic. Inside her apartment, the familiar chaos wrapped around her. Warm light, music she'd left playing, a coffee cup on the counter. She kicked off her shoes and leaned against the door, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't tried to scare her. That bothered her more than if he had. He hadn't threatened her. Hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't demanded anything. He had simply watched her, like he was trying to memorize a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Helen shook her head and laughed softly. Dangerous man, she said to no one. Not because of the power. Because of the quiet. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She stared at it for a moment before answering. Hello. Silence. Then breathing. Slow. Controlled. She smiled despite herself. You know, she said, most people say hello back. I don't call people I don't intend to see again, Park Ho said. Her smile faded into something sharper. Then don't waste my time. A pause. I won't, he replied. The call ended. Helen stared at her phone, pulse steady, eyes bright. Across the city, Park Ho lowered his phone and felt it again. That unfamiliar pull in his chest. Not obsession. Not possession. Challenge. For the first time in 10 years, someone had walked into his world and left without permission. And he hadn't stopped them. The city did not know his name, but it moved to his rhythm. Sang Park Ho sat in the back of his car as traffic parted ahead of them, rain tracing thin lines down the tinted glass. Neon signs blurred into color. He usually ignored the city like this, another system already mastered. Today, he watched. Minute J sat across from him, tablet resting untouched on his knee. The gala board called again, he said carefully. They're asking questions. Park Ho's gaze didn't shift. About what? About her. Silence filled the car, heavier than before. They don't know who she is, Minute J continued. But they noticed who she spoke to, who she touched. Park Ho's jaw tightened slightly. Not anger. Calculation. People notice disruption, Minute J said. Especially in rooms built on order. Park Ho finally looked at him. Control the narrative. Yes, sir. Quietly. The car pulled into the underground garage of Park Ho's private club. The kind of place where no cameras existed unless he allowed them to. Where deals were made in shadows and loyalty was tested in silence. Inside, men stood straighter as he passed. Whispers followed him like echoes that never quite reached his ears. "She's changed the temperature," one voice murmured when they thought he couldn't hear. Park Ho entered his private lounge and stopped. The music was wrong. Not louder. Not faster. Alive. He glanced toward the DJ booth. The man froze instantly, hands hovering over the controls. "Apologies, sir." "Leave it," Park Ho said. The bass settled into his chest, low and steady. Unwelcome. Unignorable. Across the city, Helen Joshua was late on purpose. She stood outside a gallery opening she hadn't planned to attend, rain dampening the curls at her temples. The invitation had appeared in her inbox that morning. No sender name. No explanation. Just a card. "You were seen." She smiled as she handed it to the attendant. Inside, the room buzzed with curated elegance. Wealth disguised as taste. Power disguised as art. Helen moved through it easily, her presence bending conversations toward her without effort. She felt it then. The shift. Eyes lingered longer. Smiles came quicker. People leaned in without knowing why. She caught her reflection in a darkened frame. "Ah," she murmured. "So that's how it starts." A woman approached her, tall, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp with quiet assessment. "I don't believe we've met," the woman said smoothly. "I'm Seo Lena." Helen shook her hand, unbothered. "Helen." No last name. Seo Lena's smile tightened just enough to notice. "I heard you danced with someone interesting," Seo Lena said lightly. Helen tilted her head. "I dance with whoever asks nicely." Seo Lena laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Be careful. Some men don't like being remembered for silence." Helen's smile was slow. Dangerous. Then maybe they should learn new steps. Across the city, Park Ho stood alone on the balcony of his club, rain soaking into his suit. The city breathed beneath him. Minute J approached quietly. "Sir." "There are whispers. Invitations. People are circling." Park Ho didn't turn. "Let them." "And the woman?" Park Ho closed his eyes briefly. "She's already moving," he said. "She just doesn't know who's watching yet." The rain fell harder. Two worlds had begun to tilt toward each other, and neither intended to stop. Rain followed Sang Park Ho everywhere that night. It clung to his coat as he entered the mansion, soaked into the stone steps, whispered against the windows like a warning he didn't need spoken aloud. The house returned to silence the moment the doors closed behind him, but it was no longer complete. Something lingered. Minute J waited in the foyer this time, not the study. A small change. An intentional one. "There was a request," Minute J said. Park Ho removed his gloves slowly. "From whom?" A media liaison connected to the gala board. "They're nervous." Park Ho didn't respond. "They want reassurance," Minute J continued. "They don't like variables." Park Ho finally looked up. Then they should stop creating them. Minute J lowered his head. "Yes, sir." Park Ho moved past him, ascending the stairs without another word. In his study, the city lights blinked like distant signals. The red heel was no longer on the table. He had locked it away, not to forget, to remember selectively. Across the city, Helen Joshua was beginning to notice patterns. It started small. The barista who comped her coffee without explanation. The doorman who suddenly knew her name. The invitation that arrived at her apartment door instead of her inbox. This one was heavier. Embossed. Old money. She read it once, then laughed softly. "So this is how they circle," she murmured. At the event, she wore black. Simple. Sharp. She didn't overdress. Didn't underplay it either. When she walked in, conversation adjusted around her like furniture being moved without permission. She felt eyes on her, not hungry, not hostile. Assessing. A man approached, smiling too easily. "You're becoming quite the topic." Helen sipped her drink. "I always have been." "You should be careful," he said. "Attention like this comes with expectations." She leaned in slightly. "Then they should manage those themselves." Elsewhere, Park Ho stood behind tinted glass in a private room overlooking another elite gathering. He hadn't planned to attend. He never did. Tonight, he watched. "She's there," Minute J said quietly. Park Ho already knew. On the floor below, Helen laughed at something someone said. The sound carried upward, faint but unmistakable. Something in Park Ho's chest tightened. Not jealousy. Recognition. "She hasn't changed," Minute J observed. "No," Park Ho said. "The room has." A man leaned too close to Helen. Park Ho's hand rested on the railing. Not gripping. Measuring. Helen stepped back on her own. She always did. Park Ho exhaled slowly. That was when Minute J spoke again. "Sir, if this continues, people will start asking who she belongs to." Park Ho's voice was calm, dangerous in its restraint. "She belongs to herself." Minute J hesitated. "And if they don't accept that?" Park Ho's gaze never left her. "Then," he said, "they will learn." Across the room, Helen glanced upward without knowing why. For a brief moment, her eyes met the glass. She couldn't see him, but she felt him. And she smiled. Sang Park Ho did not attend the next 3 invitations. That, more than his presence, unsettled people. He stayed in his mansion, returning to old routines with new fractures. Morning briefings. Silent meals. Long hours in his study where the city glimmered but no longer felt distant enough. Minute J noticed it first. Park Ho no longer dismissed reports about places he did not control. He asked questions. Who hosted? Who attended? Who watched? Never her name. Never directly. Across the city, Helen Joshua felt the pressure sharpen. It arrived disguised as opportunity. A private studio offering her a space to teach. A luxury brand hinting at collaboration. Invitations that carried expectation instead of curiosity. Each one came with invisible strings. She declined most of them. Not loudly. Not dramatically. She simply didn't show up. Tonight, she chose something smaller. A jazz lounge tucked between 2 closed storefronts. Low lights. Live music. No cameras. No hierarchy pretending to be taste. Helen sat near the stage, drink untouched, letting the trumpet cry softly into the room. Music like this didn't ask permission. It existed. She closed her eyes. For the first time since the gala, she danced again. Not standing. Just a slow sway of shoulders. A foot tapping against the floor. Private. Unperformed. She didn't notice the man at the bar until the music paused. Sang Park Ho stood with his back half-turned to the room. Coat dark. Presence unmistakable even without recognition. He hadn't planned to come in. He had passed the place twice before stopping. He told himself it was the music. Helen opened her eyes. She felt him before she saw him. Her breath stilled, not from fear, but from surprise. "Well," she said softly, turning on her stool. "Either I'm imagining you again, or you're very bad at staying away." Park Ho didn't approach. He didn't smile. "I didn't follow you," he said. "I didn't say you did." Silence settled between them, dense but not uncomfortable. The band resumed, slower this time. "You don't belong here," Helen said lightly. "I know." "Then why come?" Park Ho's gaze flicked briefly to the stage, to the musician, to the movement she'd allowed herself when she thought she was alone. "I wanted to see if you always move like that," he said. Her eyebrow lifted. "Like what?" "Like you're not asking." She studied him for a long moment. "That touch," she said quietly. "At the gala. You've been chasing it." He didn't deny it. "I've been trying to understand it," he replied. Helen slid off her stool and stood in front of him. Not too close. Not distant. "You won't," she said. "Not by watching." The music swelled. She extended her hand. Not demanding. Not daring. Inviting. The room seemed to hold its breath. Park Ho stared at her hand. 10 years of stillness pressed against his spine. Then, slowly, he lifted his own. Not to take it. Just close enough that their fingers brushed. Electric. Controlled. Enough. Helen smiled. "That's all you get tonight," she said, withdrawing first. She walked past him toward the exit without looking back. Park Ho remained where he was, pulse loud in his ears. His hand still remembered the shape of hers. Outside, the city breathed. And for the first time in 10 years, he let it. The night did not release Sang Park-ho easily. He stood in the jazz lounge long after Helen left, the music thinning into murmurs, the room returning to itself. His hand hung at his side, fingers flexing once, as if testing whether sensation would fade if ignored. It didn't. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city smelled clean, rinsed of heat and noise. Park-ho stepped into the street without his driver, coat unbuttoned, pace unhurried. He walked. That alone was a deviation. He replayed the moment not as memory, but as data, the distance she kept, the timing of her withdrawal, the way she offered without offering herself. It wasn't seduction. It was permission, with limits. At the mansion, Minute J was waiting. You didn't call, Minute J said carefully. I didn't need a car, Park-ho replied. That earned a glance. Nothing more. There's movement, Minute J said. Not loud, but coordinated. Invitations tightening. People testing boundaries. Park-ho nodded. Let them. And Helen Joshua. Park-ho paused at the foot of the stairs. She is not to be contacted. Minute J's brow creased. Sir. Not by us, Park-ho clarified. Not yet. He went upstairs alone. Across the city, Helen Joshua leaned against the open window of her apartment, the night air cooling her skin. She hadn't expected him to come. She hadn't planned to leave so soon. Both truths sat easily together. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without hesitation. You're late. I wasn't going to call, Park-ho said. I know. Silence stretched. Comfortable. Dangerous. You didn't take my hand, she said. I didn't trust myself, he replied. Helen smiled softly. That's honest. Another pause. The kind that felt like standing at the edge of something deep. People are watching you, he said. They always are. More now. She considered that. Is this where you tell me to disappear? No, he said. It's where I tell you the rules will change. For who? For everyone, Park-ho answered. Helen's gaze lifted to the city lights. I don't like cages. I don't build them, he said. I remove them. She laughed quietly. Careful. You'll start sounding like an invitation. Is that dangerous? He asked. Yes, she said. Because I might accept. The line went quiet again. Not broken. Just breathing. Tomorrow, Park-ho said, finally. There's a place. Neutral. No eyes. Helen tilted her head. That's you asking. Yes. And if I say no? I'll listen, he said. She closed her eyes, remembering the brush of his fingers, the restraint beneath it. I'll think about it, she said. She ended the call first. Park-ho lowered his phone and stood at the window of his study. City stretched beneath him like a living thing. The red hill remained locked away, but its presence no longer felt necessary. He didn't need proof anymore. Choice had entered the room, and it was learning his name. The place Park-ho chose had no name. It sat above the city, not high enough to boast, not low enough to be accessible. Concrete, glass, and shadow. A private terrace wrapped in steel railings, rainwater still clinging to the floor from the night before. No guards in sight. No cameras. Neutral ground. Helen arrived alone. She wore no armor this time. No performance. Just herself, dark coat, hair loose, eyes alert but calm. She took in the space in one slow sweep, then looked toward the man waiting by the railing. You always pick places that feel like decisions, she said. Park-ho turned. So do you. They stood facing each other, several steps apart. The city hummed below them, unaware that something delicate was unfolding above its noise. You asked, Helen said. So I came. I didn't expect you to, Park-ho replied. That's honest, she said. You're getting better at that. A faint breath left him. Not quite a laugh, but close. I haven't invited anyone here in 10 years, he said. She didn't ask why. She waited. When you touched me, Park-ho continued, voice steady but low. It wasn't desire that woke up. It was awareness. Helen's gaze sharpened. Awareness of what? That I was still here, he said. Under everything I built to survive. Silence settled. Not heavy, not awkward. Intentional. Helen stepped closer. One step. Then stopped. I didn't touch you to save you, she said quietly. And I won't stay if that's what you expect. I know, he replied. That's why you're still standing here. The wind shifted, carrying city sounds upward. Music, laughter, life. You live like the world is something you observe, Helen said. Not something you join. I did, he corrected. She studied him for a long moment, then reached out. This time, she didn't take his hand. She placed her palm flat against his chest, over his heart. The contact was brief, grounding, intentional. Park Ho inhaled sharply. 10 years collapsed into a single beat. She stepped back before he could move. That, she said, is where it ends for now. He nodded once, accepted it. Below them, a phone buzzed in Park Ho's pocket. He ignored it. The second buzz was insistent. Minute J's name lit the screen. Park Ho answered without breaking eye contact with Helen. Yes. There's been a leak, Minute J said. Photos from the gala resurfaced. The media's moving faster than we anticipated. Park Ho closed his eyes briefly. Helen heard enough. So, she said calmly, this is where the world catches up. Yes, he said, and it won't be kind. She smiled, not soft, not afraid. Good, she replied. I don't like easy stories. Park Ho watched her turn toward the exit, coat lifting in the wind. Helen, he called. She paused, looked back. I won't cage you,